I used to work for a packaging company at the central office. It was a place I actually loved. Friendly people, a good boss, and steady work. I felt safe there, comfortable. That is, until the day he arrived. The owner's daughters helped run the company, and part of my role was assisting with interviews by sitting in, taking notes. On the day he came in, let's call him C, something about the air in the room shifted. He walked in, shook my manager's hand, but never once broke his stare from me. His eyes locked on mine with a kind of intensity that instantly unsettled me. I forced a polite smile, returned his hello quickly, and tried to focus on the interview. He got the job. The next day, things seemed normal enough. We introduced him to the crew, walked him through the inventory, showed him the computer system. He was polite, attentive, and professional. For a brief moment, I even felt guilty for my unease the day before. Maybe I'd imagined it. But then came the first sign. At the end of that very first day, as I walked toward my car, there he was, standing right next to it, waiting. My stomach dropped. He smiled and said he wanted to apologize for staring during the interview. He insisted he hadn't meant to be rude. I told him it was fine, that there was no harm done. But then he asked me to lunch. I quickly declined, telling him I usually ate at my desk. That was a lie, but one I hoped would send the message. It didn't. A couple of weeks later, a coworker and close friend, H, asked me what was going on between me and C. I was confused. What did she mean? She explained that C had been telling others in his crew that we flirted constantly, that there was chemistry, that he saw us becoming serious. My blood ran cold. I had barely spoken to him outside of work tasks. Handing someone an inventory sheet was hardly flirting. And now people thought there was something between us? That same day, I knew he realized I had found out. His glances toward me were sharper, more insistent. But I had no energy to deal with it. I had to leave early to watch my sick 5-year-old niece. That evening, I was alone with her at my sister's house when the doorbell rang. I peeked out the window. My stomach lurched. It was C. I froze for a split second, then quickly told my niece to lock herself in the bedroom and hide. My hands trembled as I opened the front door, but only the security door, keeping it locked between us. My voice shook with fury. "What the hell are you doing here?" He started stammering about wanting to explain himself. I cut him off, demanding to know how he even knew where I lived. His face darkened. He grew quiet, his tone changing from nervous to eerily serious. "I recognized your car when I was driving home," he said flatly. But he was lying. My sister had taken my car that day. It wasn't even there. And I knew from helping file his paperwork that he didn't live anywhere near my neighborhood. I snapped. I told him to leave before I really lost my temper. That's when his mask slipped. His voice rose, his words spilling out like venom. He said I was hurting his feelings, that I was too stupid to realize what a great catch he was. My skin crawled as his voice grew louder, angrier. And then, salvation. My brother-in-law pulled into the driveway. A big man, gentle by nature, but intimidating when he needed to be. C turned his head, caught sight of him, and I watched the color drain from his face. In that instant, he fled. I had never seen anyone run so fast in my life. I immediately called my manager, my voice shaking as I explained everything. She reassured me, saying she'd tell the temp agency that C wasn't allowed back. But the real horror came 2 days later. My manager called me into her office. She had a feeling after my call and decided to review the security cameras. And what she found made my skin crawl. The day of C's interview, after it ended, he never left. He sat in his car outside the office for hours, 6 hours, just waiting, watching. The only time he moved was when I left for the day. That's how he knew my car. That's how he knew where I lived. And suddenly, it all made sense. He had followed me home. I never saw him again after that, but to this day, the thought of him standing in my driveway, insisting I belonged to him, chills me to my core. Because now I know I hadn't just been working with a coworker. I had been living under the watch of a predator. I don't think I'll ever forget this memory, no matter how many years pass. It happened when I was just a child, around 8 years old, in the Republic of Ireland. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone else, the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked, where neighbors greeted each other by name, and where parents felt safe letting their children play outside until dark. A town that felt safe, looked safe, but in hindsight, maybe that false sense of security was the most dangerous thing of all. Our town sat near the border with Northern Ireland, something I didn't understand the significance of back then, but I do now. That border and what it represented would one day become the shadow that lingers over this memory. My neighbor, Michelle, was 1 year older than me. She was adventurous, bold, and always seemed to have a plan. We loved going to our local community center to swim, and on this Sunday afternoon, our parents allowed us to walk there alone. It was only 10 minutes away, a straight shot through familiar streets filled with cars and people. Nothing about it felt unsafe. We went, we swam, and we laughed like carefree children. But then came the choice that changed everything. Instead of walking straight home, we decided to wander deeper into town. Just an extra 5 minutes, we thought. What harm could it do? I can still see it in my mind. Our wet hair clinging to our cheeks, our bare legs cold against the summer breeze as we ate bright blue Mr. Freezy ice pops, wandering through the tiny town center. Michelle's eyes lit up as she suggested we visit the pet shop, and I remember how excited she was. She insisted she knew a shortcut. The shortcut led us behind the construction site of a brand new shopping center. The air smelled of dust and wet cement, the ground littered with rubble and scaffolding. It was quieter there, too quiet. Every sound, the creak of metal, the shuffle of our shoes, echoed unnaturally loud. That's when he appeared. A grown man stepped out from behind part of the scaffolding, and in his hands, God, I'll never forget it, he was carrying 2 cold, gleaming instruments. Now, as an adult, I recognize them instantly, vaginal speculums. But at 8 years old, I only knew they were sharp, metallic, and terrifying. He grinned as he held them out toward us. "Girls, come here, come here. Do you know what these are?" His voice was thick with a Northern Irish accent, not local, not familiar,
and somehow that alone made the hair on my arms rise. Michelle and I froze. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear the blood in my ears. We both muttered a shaky "no" and instinctively stepped backward. But he stepped forward. Every movement was deliberate, predatory. For a moment, it felt like time slowed. The empty construction site swallowed us whole, and I knew no one could hear us if we screamed. And then, salvation. A small, two-door blue car rolled toward us, its tires crunching over gravel. Inside were two women. The man's eyes flickered toward the car, and in an instant he bolted, disappearing between the steel beams like he had never been there at all. The car stopped right in front of us. The women leaned out, their faces calm, almost too calm. "Girls, is that man hassling you?" one asked. Before we could even answer, the other chimed in. "Hop in, girls, we'll get you home." My childlike brain immediately latched on to the idea of safety, a ride home, away from danger. I stepped forward, ready to climb into the back seat. But Michelle's voice cut through my panic like a blade. "No," she said firmly. "We're fine. Our mums are right around the corner." Her words hung in the air like a shield. The women's faces shifted, something unreadable passing over their expressions, before they forced a smile. "All right then, if you're sure." And just like that, they sped away. I burst into tears, whispering harshly to Michelle, "Why didn't we go with them? What if he comes back? What if he follows us?" Michelle turned to me, her eyes fierce and wiser than her years. "Are you stupid?" she said. "They had Northern Irish accents too." Silence. Her words hit me like ice water. Even now, almost 20 years later, I can't stop thinking about that day. The man with the speculums, the women in the car. Were they working together? Were we seconds away from being kidnapped, trafficked across the border, never to be seen again? Or were those women genuinely trying to help, just happening to pass by at the exact right moment? That's the part that keeps me awake at night, because deep down, I know the truth. Some things weren't coincidences, and I was never meant to walk away. I need to tell you about a night that has haunted me ever since. It happened back in 2015, or maybe it was 2016. The details blur together now, except for the memory of one man's face, and the feeling that I barely escaped something much darker than I can put into words. For context, I'm a woman, and at the time I was living with someone who worked the opposite schedule of mine. He worked graveyard shifts while I worked during the day. This meant that on weeknights when I was home, I was alone. And that night, loneliness was exactly what pushed me into danger. I remember it vividly. I was feeling especially isolated one weekday evening, and to make matters worse, my favorite toy broke. So, against better judgment, I decided to drive downtown to the 24-hour adult store to replace it. The town I lived in wasn't big, mostly residential, a quiet suburban place, but the downtown strip was small, dimly lit, and unsettling at night. My apartment was about 10 minutes away. I parked behind the store, in a lot that was poorly lit, connected to bars and late-night restaurants. Already, the place gave me a sense of unease. As I walked toward the store entrance, I noticed a man. He was standing there alone, smoking a cigarette under the weak glow of a streetlight. It was past 1 a.m., and something about him instantly unsettled me. Maybe it was the way he seemed out of place, too still, too focused. He wore a long white t-shirt, baggy shorts, sneakers, and high socks. A common look in my town, but there was something about his presence, like he had been waiting. When I walked past, he said hi. His voice was calm but deliberate. I muttered a quiet hi back, refusing to make eye contact. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw his head turn, locking onto me. And as I passed, I realized he was following me. This wasn't a coincidence. The moment I walked by, he matched my pace, just a step behind me. My skin prickled. The street was empty, silent, and for the first time I considered my options. Keep walking, duck into a bar, or go inside the store as planned. Instinct told me the store was safest, well lit, with people inside. I pushed through the door, and he followed. But instead of shopping, he lingered near the front, just watching me. Not even pretending, just waiting. I ignored the sounds he made, low noises, like he was trying to get my attention. My pulse hammered as I pretended to browse. When I whispered to the cashier, asking if he knew the man, the clerk didn't understand. He asked me to speak louder. I didn't want to, but I had no choice. So I told him. This man followed me inside. The cashier eventually confronted him, telling him to leave. But he didn't. He just stood there. My heart dropped as I realized I was trapped unless he was gone. Finally, the cashier lost patience. He pulled out a baton from under the counter, raised it high, and asked the man if he understood this. Only then did the man leave, reluctantly, muttering something about not understanding English. Still, I didn't feel safe. I pretended to shop longer, hoping he wouldn't be waiting outside. The cashier even showed me the security monitors and promised to watch as I went to my car. I wanted him to walk me out, but he couldn't abandon the store. So I hurried outside, clutching my keys. I slid into my Honda Accord, started the engine, and prepared to leave. But then, while adjusting my seatbelt, I glanced into my side mirror. And there he was, that same man, speed-walking straight to my driver's side door. His expression was intense, like he had been waiting all along for this moment. My blood ran cold. I slammed the car into reverse, my tires screeching as I tore out of the parking space. The sudden motion startled him. He froze just feet from my door. For one terrifying second, our eyes met. I gave him the coldest, deadliest stare I could muster. And for the first time, I saw something change in him. Defeat. He turned away, walking back toward the shadows he had come from. I never saw him again. That night still lingers in my mind. The way he followed me, the way he waited, the way he almost got close enough to touch my door. I told my roommate the morning, ashamed for putting myself in that situation so late at night. But even now, years later, I've never gone out past 9 p.m. again. My town isn't the most dangerous, but it isn't the safest either. And to the man who stalked me in the darkness, who thought he could follow me home, let us never meet.